She called herself the Ketamine Queen. On Wednesday, a federal judge gave her 15 years. The woman who supplied the drugs that killed Matthew Perry has been sentenced. This is True Crime Today. Coming up, the drug dealer at the center of Matthew Perry's death is sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Plus, a Washington state cold case cracked after 34 years. And a DNA hit closes a decades-old Georgia murder. And in today's Deep Look, how federal prosecutors are using a powerful statute to hold drug dealers accountable for overdose deaths. I'm Morgan Voss. Let's talk about True Crime Today. Today's episode is brought to you by Unknown Humans Remain. Want to help solve crimes? Make the move to help the humans by transferring your DNA to help law enforcement. More details at unknownhumansremain.com. Our lead story is the case of the Ketamine Queen, Los Angeles, California. On Wednesday, April 8th, a federal judge sentenced Jasveen Sangha to 15 years in prison. Sangha, 42, is the North Hollywood drug dealer prosecutors called the Ketamine Queen. She supplied the ketamine that killed actor Matthew Perry in October 2023. Perry was 54 years old. He was found unresponsive in his hot tub at his Los Angeles home. Sangha ran what prosecutors described as a high-volume drug trafficking operation out of her home. She stored, packaged, and distributed drugs, including ketamine and methamphetamine, dating back to at least 2019. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of maintaining a drug-involved premises, 3 counts of distribution of ketamine, and 1 count of distribution of ketamine resulting in death or serious bodily injury. The case did not begin with Perry. In 2019, Sangha sold 4 vials of ketamine to a Los Angeles man named Cody McLaury. He died hours later.
Sangha kept selling after that. When she eventually became aware that her drugs had contributed to Perry's death, she continued to sell. Prosecutors said that pattern of conduct drove the length of the sentence. At the sentencing hearing, Keith Morrison addressed the court. Morrison is a journalist and correspondent with Dateline NBC. He is also Matthew Perry's stepfather. He spoke about the impact of Perry's death on his family. Sangha received 15 years in prison and 3 years of supervised release. Several other individuals connected to the Perry drug supply chain have already been sentenced or are awaiting sentencing in the same case. We will continue to follow the remaining proceedings.
And now to our case updates. Update 1. Colin Gray, Apalachee High School shooting. On March 3rd of this year, a Georgia jury convicted Colin Gray on all 27 charges connected to the September 2024 shooting at Apalachee High School in Winder, Georgia. Gray is the father of the 14-year-old shooter. He was found guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder for the deaths of students Mason Schermerhorn and Christian Angulo, and involuntary manslaughter in the killings of teachers Richard Aspinwall and Christina Irami. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Sentencing has not yet been scheduled. Gray faces 10 to 30 years on each murder count. Legal experts have described the verdict as a continuation of the precedent set by the Crumbly convictions in Michigan. Parents who give at-risk children access to firearms are increasingly being held criminally liable for what follows. Update 2. Washington State Cold Case, 1992.
On April 1st, James Robert Randall was arrested in Pierce County, Washington, on a first-degree murder charge. The victim was his wife, Janice Randall. She died in 1992. For 34 years, her death was listed as an overdose. Bail has been set at $1 million. The break in the case came through the work of the couple's own daughters. One of them was 18 months old the night her mother died. She and her sister spent years pushing investigators to take another look. Their persistence is what led to this arrest. Update 3. Georgia cold case, DNA hit. In Ware County, Georgia, investigators have announced an arrest in a decades-old rape and murder case. Freddie Lee Granger Jr., 68, has been charged with rape, aggravated assault, and murder. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation's cold case unit linked him to the crime through DNA evidence. The case had been unsolved for more than 40 years. Tonight's Deep Look stays with the Matthew Perry case because Jasveen Sangha's sentencing is about more than one woman and one victim. Federal prosecutors built this case using a statute called distribution resulting in death. Under federal law, if a person distributes a controlled substance and that distribution directly and proximately causes someone's death, the mandatory minimum sentence is 20 years. The judge in this case sentenced Sangha to 15 years after crediting her guilty plea. The statute is powerful. It does not require prosecutors to prove intent to kill. It requires them to prove that the drugs were distributed and that death followed. That is a lower bar, and it is increasingly being used in overdose cases across the country. The Perry case is notable because of who the victim was, but the legal framework being applied is the same one used in thousands of quieter overdose deaths every year, and prosecutors in this case were deliberate about charging every link in the supply chain. At least 5 individuals connected to Perry's drug supply faced federal charges. One of his personal assistants, a doctor who wrote illegal prescriptions, middlemen who brokered the deals. The approach signals that federal investigators are treating celebrity overdose cases the same way they treat trafficking networks. Go up the chain. For advocates working on overdose accountability, Sangha's sentence is a data point. A 15-year term for a drug dealer whose customer died sends a message to suppliers. Whether that message reaches the people it needs to reach is a harder question. What is clear is that federal prosecutors now have a well-documented playbook for this kind of case. And with fentanyl and ketamine overdose deaths still rising in many parts of the country, that playbook is likely to be used again. Coming up, Colin Gray's sentencing in the Apalachee case is expected to be scheduled in the coming weeks. We will have coverage when that date is set. The remaining defendants in the Matthew Perry case are also expected to face court proceedings in the months ahead. True Crime Today will follow both. That's your True Crime Today. I'm Morgan Voss. Stay informed. Stay safe.